Part 1, The Return. Lena stood at the front steps of the old cottage, holding the keys in her hand, unable to bring herself to turn the lock. The house in the village of Vareski looked frozen in time. Everything was just as she remembered from childhood. The peeling bench by the porch, the moss-covered well, and the chipped clay pot under the window where her grandmother used to grow mint. Everything was the same, except her grandmother was gone. "Okay, here we go," Lena whispered and turned the key. The door creaked open, releasing a wave of stale air. Dust danced in the sunlight like tiny ghosts. The wooden floor groaned under her steps as she entered, greeted by silence, memory, and stillness. She walked into her old bedroom, a small, cozy space with a floral curtain, a worn bookshelf, and a handmade quilt folded neatly on the bed. The record player still stood in the corner, like a museum piece frozen in the past. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Lena had come back for the funeral. Her grandmother, Vera, had passed away at 89. The village doctor said it was her heart. Her mother, Irina, had flown in from Canada for 2 days, signed some papers, and left just as quickly, not even staying for the burial. "You can keep the house or sell it." "I don't care," Irina had said coldly. "I haven't called that place home in decades." But Lena couldn't walk away so easily. On the third day, after sorting through boxes of clothes and dishes, Lena climbed up to the attic. As a child, she'd always been scared of it. The narrow staircase, the smell of old wood, the strange silence that lived up there. Now, as she pushed open the creaky attic door with a flashlight in hand, she felt something else. Not fear, but a kind of curiosity. A pull. The attic was cluttered with memories. Dusty trunks, yellowed newspapers, old blankets. She was about to leave when something caught her eye. A wooden box in the corner, locked with a rusty clasp. She pulled it out and used a hammer to crack it open. Inside were dozens of letters tied neatly with a faded blue ribbon. The top envelope was dated 1978. Her grandmother's name was written on it in slanted, passionate handwriting. To Vera, "Don't destroy this. You deserve to know the truth." Lena slowly opened the letter and unfolded the brittle paper. The ink had faded but was still legible. "My dearest Vera, you haven't written back, and I don't blame you. You're angry, you're hurt, and you're right to be. I should have told you the truth long ago. But if I had, you would have left me, and I couldn't bear that." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just some love letter. There was weight behind these words. A confession. "I swore to protect you from the past, but maybe in doing so, I've only created a deeper wound. I never meant to hurt you, but what I'm about to tell you will change how you see everything. Our marriage, our family, even Irina." Lena's heart skipped a beat. Her mother's name. She glanced at the rest of the box. There were more letters, all from the same person, spanning over 2 decades. Some had tear stains, some were sealed. Others were folded hastily, as if written in desperation. She didn't know who wrote them yet, but something in her gut told her this was no ordinary correspondence. Whatever secrets had been buried in this house for years were now in her hands. And somehow, she knew they would change everything. Lena stood up, brushing dust from her jeans, holding the letter tightly. Tomorrow she'd read more. For now, she just stared out the attic window at the falling dusk and whispered to no one in particular. "Who were you really, Grandma?" Part 2. The Man Behind the Ink. The next morning, Lena didn't bother making coffee. She climbed straight back into the attic with a blanket and a thermos of water, determined to read every word in those letters. She pulled the second one from the stack. This time, it was dated June 12, 1979. The handwriting was the same, messy, emotional, raw. _Vera. I waited for you by the lake like we agreed. You never came. I sat there until the sun went down. I thought maybe you changed your mind. Or maybe Irina saw us last time and said something. I don't know. But the silence is killing me. _. Lena paused. The lake? Irina again? Something wasn't adding up. I know it's wrong. I know what we did was wrong. But Vera, I can't keep pretending that I don't love you. That I can live in this lie. Every time I look at Irina, I see the damage. And I know it's my fault. But it's yours too. We both made choices. Lena's hands trembled slightly. Irina? Damage? This sounded like more than just a messy romance. She flipped the letter over. You promised me after that night that we would tell her the truth, that she deserved it. And now you hide, and I'm left to face her confusion alone. She's not stupid. She knows something's wrong. She asked me yesterday if I still loved her mother. Lena stared at the name on the envelope again. To Vera. Then she flipped the letter to the bottom corner where a name was signed. P. She furrowed her brow. No last name, just an initial. She returned to the box and searched for the next letter. July 1979. This one was shorter but more intense. You said you would come today, that we'd talk. But I waited again. And again you never showed. Why are you doing this to me? Why did we start this if you were going to hide from it the moment it became real? Lena sat back against the wooden wall of the attic. Her mind was racing. If Vera, her grandmother, had been involved with this man P around 1978-1979, and her mother Irina was already a teenager then, that meant, was this man Irina's father? Or wasn't he? The letters continued in chronological order year by year. Some months passed between them, sometimes a full year, but he always returned to writing. It was like he never gave up. Lena pulled another envelope, this one from 1982. Vera, I saw you in town last week. You pretended not to see me. Irina was with you. She looked so much like you I thought I was seeing double. And maybe that's what hurts most. That you raised her alone and shut me out, when I should have been part of her life too. Lena's pulse quickened. Could it be? Could P have been her real grandfather? Not the man she always believed was Vera's husband? She scrambled through the papers again until she found a photo stuck between two envelopes. It was old, faded, and bent at the edges. A man, perhaps in his 30s, standing by a lake. Dark hair, strong jawline, sad eyes. On the back of the photo, in the same handwriting as the letters, it read, Veresky Lake, Summer 78. She stared at the photo, trying to place the face. It wasn't the man from the pictures in the house. Not the grandfather she'd grown up seeing on the living room wall. This was someone else entirely. Someone forgotten. Someone hidden. She whispered aloud, Grandma, what did you do? Part 3. The silence between them. Lena couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her grandmother's old bed, the worn quilt pulled up to her chin, the silence of the countryside pressing down like a weight on her chest. The letters haunted her. They weren't just a window into the past. They were a mirror, reflecting everything she thought she knew about her family, shattering it piece by piece. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She called her mother, Irina Petrova. Her mother's voice came through, sharp and distracted, as always. It's me, Lena said. I need to ask you something. A pause. Are you still at the house? Yes, Mom. Why didn't you ever talk about Grandpa? What are you talking about? You saw his picture. You've heard the stories. He died before you were born. What is there to talk about? That's not what I mean, Lena said slowly. I found some letters in the attic from someone named P. They were written to Grandma from the late 70s. About you. Silence. Then, a cold, clipped reply. You shouldn't be digging into that. So it's true, Lena whispered. He wasn't your father, was he? Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, Irina spoke. Her voice was softer now. I don't know who my father is. Lena blinked, stunned. What? I never knew. And Grandma never told me. She just said, some things are better left buried. I asked her once when I was 17, after I found a letter hidden in her sewing kit. She burned it right in front of me. Lena's throat tightened. But why? Because she was ashamed? Irina said, bitterness creeping into her voice. Because she lied to everyone. To me. To herself. She married a good man later, the one you thought was your grandfather, and made a life. But before that, she was with someone she wasn't supposed to be with. Someone people around here whispered about. She wouldn't even say his name. Lena clutched the photo she had found in the attic. Do you remember this man? The one in the picture by the lake. Irina hesitated. I remember him. A little. He used to pass through town. Tall. Handsome. Drove a motorcycle. I thought he was a friend of hers. Then one day he just stopped coming. And Grandma never spoke of him again. Lena swallowed hard. His letters, he loved her. He wanted to be part of your life. He begged her to tell you the truth. Well, she didn't, Irina said flatly. And now she's gone. So what's the point of digging all this up? Because it matters, Lena said firmly. Because maybe part of why you're so distant, so cold, comes from not knowing. From that silence she forced on you. I built my life without him. I didn't need a father to become who I am. But maybe you needed the truth. Silence again. I'm staying a few more days, Lena said. There's more in the attic. I need to know who he was, and why she pushed him away. Her mother didn't respond. Then, just before hanging up, she whispered, Be careful with ghosts, Lena. Sometimes they don't want to be found. Click. Lena stared at the phone in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly. She was more certain than ever. This was no longer just about curiosity. This was about healing something that had festered in her family for generations. That afternoon, she returned to the attic. And deep in the bottom of the box, beneath the letters, she found something different. A smaller envelope, sealed in wax. It had her grandmother's handwriting on it. For my granddaughter, if she ever comes looking. Part 4. Vera's Confession. Lena held the wax-sealed envelope in her hands for several long minutes before she could bring herself to break the seal. For my granddaughter, if she ever comes looking. The words made her breath catch in her throat. Had her grandmother known that someday someone would dig deep enough to find the truth? Had she wanted to be found? She carefully peeled away the seal and unfolded the letter. The paper was heavier than the others, and the handwriting more careful. The deliberate strokes of someone who knew their words would carry weight. My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, it means you've found the letters. And it means you've begun to see the cracks beneath our perfect family picture. I never intended for you to carry this weight, but perhaps it was always yours to find. The truth is something I've kept buried my whole life, and now, as mine comes to a close, I realize what a mistake that was. Lena's eyes welled with tears, but she kept reading. His name was Pavel. I never told anyone that, not even your mother.
We met in 1977.
He was a mechanic from the next town over. Wild, restless, kind. He made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. I was a single mother then, raising Irina on my own, working 2 jobs and trying not to drown. He brought laughter back into my world. And love. We were never meant to be together. He was already engaged to another woman, a quiet girl from his village. Their marriage was arranged, but he kept coming back to me, and I let him. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him. He said he'd leave her. He said he'd stay. But I knew better. I knew men like him couldn't be tied down, no matter how sincere their eyes looked in the moment. So I lied. I told him I lost the baby. I told him to go, to marry her, to forget me. Lena froze. Pregnant? Her heart raced. That baby was Irina. Lena's breath caught. He never knew. I didn't want Irina to grow up watching me cry over a man who couldn't stay. I didn't want her to grow up waiting by the window. So I built a life. I found a good man years later who agreed to give her his name and raise her as his own. But I never stopped reading Pavel's letters. He never stopped writing. I kept them all because I loved him, even if I was too proud to admit it, even if I was too afraid. And now you, with your wide eyes and sharp heart, you found what I was too weak to face. Maybe you'll forgive me, or maybe you won't. But I hope at least you'll understand. With all my love, Grandma Vera. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just let the truth settle into her bones. The generations of silence, pride, and love unspoken. The legacy of decisions made in fear. The lies meant to protect but which only deepened the pain. Lena sat still for a long time after she finished reading. Irina wasn't just the daughter of a man who vanished. She was the daughter of a woman who chose silence over scandal. And Lena? She was the one who'd finally opened the door. She carefully placed the letter back into the envelope, stood up, and walked to the attic window. The sky outside was darkening, the horizon glowing orange with the last light of day. She picked up the photo of Pavel again. His eyes, there was something familiar in them now. Something that reminded her of her own reflection. Part 5. The Man He Became. The next morning, Lena packed a small bag, tucked her grandmother's final letter and the photograph into it, and drove toward the neighboring village of Roski, the place where Pavel had once lived, according to Vera's letter. The road was bumpy, flanked by fields and scattered cottages. It was only 30 minutes away, but with every passing kilometer, Lena felt like she was traveling through time. Roski was small, even smaller than Vereski, and quiet. A single cafe, a closed-down post office, and a row of homes with peeling paint and lace curtains. She stopped outside a mechanic's garage, rusted and half-collapsed, with faded Cyrillic letters barely clinging to the sign. Inside, an elderly man with oil-stained hands was sorting through a box of spark plugs. Lena approached slowly. "Excuse me," she said in Ukrainian. "I'm looking for someone who might have lived here. A man named Pavel. He worked as a mechanic. This was many years ago." The old man squinted at her, then at the photo she offered. A long pause. Then he chuckled softly. "Pasha," he said. "You knew him?" "I think I might be his granddaughter," she said carefully. The man's eyes softened. "Then come in. You have a right to hear about him." They sat in a dusty office with mismatched chairs and an old kettle boiling in the corner. "He worked here for 10 years, the man Mikola began. "Best mechanic I ever knew. He could fix an engine with his eyes closed. But he was restless, never stayed still. You could see in his eyes. He was running from something." "Did he ever talk about Vera? About a woman from Vereski?" Mikola nodded slowly. "Yes, Vera. He talked about her like she was the only thing that ever made sense in his life. Said she had a daughter. Said he'd made mistakes. Wrote her letters. Dozens. But never sent most of them. Just kept writing." Lena's eyes widened. "He kept writing even after she stopped responding? Until the day he died." Lena's breath caught. "When did he pass?" 1999, Mikola said. "Heart attack. In this garage. He had a small box under his desk. Wouldn't let anyone touch it. After he died, we opened it. Full of letters. All to her. Never mailed. Just words he needed to say." Lena felt something break open in her chest. The image of this man, her grandfather, sitting at a dusty desk, writing to a woman who had locked the door on him, was almost too much. "Did he ever marry?" she asked.
No.
"He was engaged once. Before Vera. But after that, no one else. Said he'd already given his heart away." Lena closed her eyes. So many years of silence. Two people in love, separated by fear, by duty, by pride, and a child caught in the middle who never got to know her real father. "He would have wanted to know you," Mikola said gently. "And her. His daughter." "I think he did," Lena whispered. "In his own way." Before leaving, Mikola handed her a small photograph from an old drawer, one Lena had never seen before. It was of Pavel, older now, in his 50s maybe. Graying hair. The same kind eyes. He was sitting at the same desk Mikola had spoken of, pen in hand, a half-written letter in front of him. On the back was scrawled a single word. Hope. Lena drove back to Vereski as the sun dipped behind the fields. The box of letters, her grandmother's confession, and now this, the other half of a story no one had ever told her. And yet, somehow she felt less alone now. She didn't just carry their blood. She carried their unfinished story, and she was beginning to believe she could give it an ending that honored them both. Part 6. A letter of her own. A week had passed since Lena returned from Roski, but the weight of everything she discovered hadn't left her. If anything, it had deepened, not as a burden, but as something sacred. She spent her last morning in Vereski walking through the garden behind the house. Her grandmother's mint still grew in the clay pot. Birds fluttered across the fence line. The house was quiet again, but now it felt different. Not empty, just full of things finally spoken. Inside, the attic was just as she had left it. She took out her notebook, placed it on the old wooden floor, and began to write. Dear Irina, I don't know if you'll ever want to read this. Maybe you'll throw it away. Maybe you'll read it once and pretend you didn't. That's okay. But I need to write it anyway. I know now why you never smiled in old photos. Why your hugs were always just a second too short. I used to think you were cold, but I think the truth is you were left out in the cold by someone who was supposed to protect you. Grandma lied to you. She did it because she was scared, but that doesn't make it right. You deserved a father. You deserved the truth. And Pavel, he never stopped loving you even from afar. I met someone who knew him. He never married. He never stopped writing. He just disappeared into silence. Like you. But you don't have to stay in that silence anymore. You're allowed to be angry, to cry, to grieve something you never had. But please, don't let it harden you anymore. Not with me. I love you, Mom. And I want to know you, the real you. Not the one Grandma shaped. Not the one who had to build walls. Just you. I'll be waiting. With love, Lena. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the kitchen table, weighted down with a porcelain teacup. Then she picked up the box of letters, both Vera's and Pavel's, and placed them into a clean wooden chest she found in the shed. She tied it shut with a linen cord and labeled it simply, "For those who want to remember." She didn't burn the past. She preserved it. Later that afternoon, she sat on the porch one last time, watching the wind shift the tall grass in waves. The decision came quietly. She would keep the house, not sell it, not erase it. There was healing in these walls, and she knew others might need that too. Maybe she would turn it into a retreat, a quiet place for people to write, to rest, to rediscover themselves. A place where letters didn't get buried in attics. Before she left, she wrote one more letter. Not to her mother, not to Pavel, to the house. Thank you for holding on to what everyone else tried to forget. I found them. I found myself. And I'll be back. She placed it under the floorboard in the attic, where the box had first been hidden. Her own secret, not of pain but of peace. As she locked the door and stepped off the porch, Lena felt lighter. Not because she had all the answers, but because the silence was finally broken. And in its place, there was a voice, her own, strong, clear, and ready to begin something new. The end.